Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Welcome to the City of Norman City Council Conference, Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. First item on the agenda is we got to get done a little bit early because we've had some technical difficulties with the video, and so it's going to take some time to go from here into the council chamber. And so if we can get done by 6:10, that'd be great. First item on the agenda is discussion regarding the Streeteries pilot program.
Okay. You guys will remember we first talked about this back in 2020. That's when Streeteries really became a thing across the country. Dining rooms were closed in many states, and this became a way to allow restaurants to continue operations within their state's restrictions during COVID. We looked at it, and in September of 2020, the mayor issued a proclamation to do what we called an outdoor expansion permit program. We didn't have any takers. The feedback we got was, the barriers and things you have to use to make this safe are too expensive for something that's just temporary. And so it kind of died right there. But we continued talking about it off and on through the committee process. And last spring, you all opted to go the route of granting a revocable license. We had one interested applicant at that time, and to kind of look at it like a pilot program. So that license was approved back in May. It will expire on November 23rd. The rate that, and this is at the meeting place, the rate they were charged was $300 for the 6-month license. They had to provide insurance. The barriers had to meet certain safety requirements. We got some barriers from ODOT for free, so that helped with some of the costs for the program. And of course, because of ABLE licensing and health department licensing requirements, it can only be the spaces in front of the restaurant. So that's been ongoing. We've gotten a variety of feedback. I know certain times, weekends, art walk, things like that, it's heavily used. During the week, not as heavily used. We've gotten a lot of feedback from neighboring property owners saying, hey, why do they get to reserve some parking spaces and we don't? We would like to reserve some spaces. And so we've had a lot of discussion about that. I know we have one other, I'm looking at Sarah back here, one other business that's interested, and then we've heard from one that would like to share the meeting place streetery if the program were to continue. I don't know if that's possible because of health department regulations and it being further down the street. But we wanted to bring that back to you to see what you all thought. And we've got this sort of the second part of the presentation is the second item on your agenda tonight, and that's just the bigger issue of designating parking spaces on city streets, because we do have a lot of requests for that, particularly since we started the streetery. So if we want to wait for feedback after you hear that presentation, we can do that, or we can discuss it now. It's really up to you guys.
What's your guys' pleasure? Would you like to hear them together or separately? Together, please.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor then to talk just more generally about parking.
And this will be a brief overview. Again, just the big picture of public parking in downtown. Some of the planning that we've done in the past. So, we'll go over the business plans. Some of these documents may be new to some of you, but we have a couple of parking business plans for those that we meter. Parking studies and planning. We've done a lot of work the last 10 years looking at parking in Campus Corner in the downtown area. Just a little bit of numbers, supply and demand, what was in that latest study, and then just some thoughts on private use of the public right-of-way in general. So the business plans, they were both approved in 2013, and then subsequent revisions are approved by the city manager. And it's really just to help us have a path forward on how much the meters are. Of course, we come back to you all if there's significant changes, but look at specifically the metered downtown Gray Street parking lot, the only area in downtown besides the courthouse that is metered. And the Asp Avenue parking lot and the other metered spots in Campus Corner. So it's really just a format for us to look at and show people this is why we, put the rate that we have. It's in the plan approved by you all, and That's how we manage those lots from a business perspective, if that makes sense. Okay. Parking studies and planning. So I threw the 2014 comprehensive transportation plan in there, had some recommendations for parking. But we've had two significant documents done in the last 8 years. The 2016 parking study, which was adopted in August of 2016, and then the parking strategic plan, which was adopted December 2018. And the study was really to look at a blueprint for future parking improvements and expenditures. And then the strategic plan was to build off of that and allow decision makers to follow a path forward on governance, maybe parking authority, how we beef up technology and enforcement, and just building again upon the future parking improvements with the planning and asset development and management. So these are the business plans, and the study and the strategic plan are all on our website for people to view if they'd like. The strategic plan is really big and has a lot of appendices to it, just talking about how to properly run a parking operation in a municipality. So lots of good stuff in there if you're interested in looking at it, but really guides our day-to-day decision making on how we look at parking into the future. A few highlights from the 2018 plan that was most recently adopted. We did acknowledge the need for additional parking in the future for downtown and Campus Corner, possibly new parking structures. There was a lot of where does the square fit for parking garage in either area. There's some site plans, just kind of back of the napkin, kind of letting us have an idea of where those could go possibly. Possibly create a separate parking fund, which we somewhat did as we inherited the transit system. We created a public transportation and parking fund, and we're looking more at that, how to put those funds and expenses and revenues together and try to stand up parking better. A governance structure, I talked about the authority aspect of it, which we've talked with the county about in the past as well, and of course hiring additional staff. And providing consistent management. OU is a big driver of parking in the city. We actually use the same meters and the same technology they do, so visitors to Norman can seamlessly go from one place to another without downloading different apps or using different payment methods. And then how to integrate with multimodal future. So the reason we put transit and parking together is because there's a really good relationship. When parking availability kind of goes down, you need alternatives to get to those places. It's build more parking, which you certainly can do, or you can provide other options like transit, biking, and walking. So they provided a lot of recommendations on how to make those things coexist. A little bit of numbers. It sounds like a lot, but there's a little over 8,300 total parking spaces in downtown and Campus Corner. Approximately 1,300 of those are on street. Since we're talking about downtown here at this meeting, 266 of those are on-street parking spaces between University and Porter on Main Street. And the rest of them, outside of the 1,300, are there's about 7,000 parking spaces off-street in lots, private lots, our Gray Street or Asp Street lot. So it sounds like a lot, but you all know they get filled up fast, and some of them or most of them are reserved for private uses already. And then the pie charts on the right are just a utilization study that they did with the 2018 plan. It shows downtown generally had about 50% availability and 50% was occupied when they did their study. And then Campus Corner, as you can see, about 72% of the stalls are occupied on any given moment. So a little bit more utilization rates in Campus Corner, hence why we have meters already in Campus Corner. There's a more of a demand in the past. And a little bit more numbers and we'll be done so we can move on to discussion. This is just really a high level of the demand, weekday, peak hour. All facilities on the left, you can see that generally there's a few pockets of red and orange where the availability isn't very good. Overall, the greens show where there's more availability. And then the private facilities is shown on the right. So again, a lot of the private facilities are being used for employees, more direct access to a business maybe, but the private facilities do get used a lot more, at least showing in these peak hour weekday demand maps. And then I'll end here, since this is kind of the topic of discussion. The way we currently have kind of a private use of public right-of-way, quote unquote, the Gray Street parking lot, if you didn't know, we have about 41 spaces that we lease annually. Is a lottery system due to the demand. So we take applications, and then Brenda Hall provides those that get the spots notification, and then they pay a fee and get to use those spots for their employees on an annual basis. Due to COVID, we had an informal policy on to-go order pickup parking. It wasn't anything that was put into stone, but some people put up some temporary signs that allowed people just to pull right up in front of the business to get their food that they had ordered and then go back home, right? We saw a lot of that during COVID. And then we already talked about the street reads. It was actually allowed by council action. And then just some thoughts as we continue the discussion from us. Private use could diminish available parking for the public, obviously. If you start designating spots for one user, then it kind of takes away that aspect of shared parking. Some users need more spots in the morning than others at night. There's a really good synergy there. You don't have to build as much parking because everybody's sharing it, those types of things. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, when he gets finished with
Okay.
this.
It could cause inequity issues. I think I just hit on that for businesses. And then enforcement issues. How do you enforce that somebody went to this particular business effectively? So those are some thoughts that we had on really designating those use for single businesses or users. And then I threw in a few pictures. There's the streetery that we have currently on the top left. And then everybody's been to downtown Main Street, but just showing, this was actually taken yesterday at about noon, lunchtime, for the block that has Das Boot and the play pit area and different things. So again, just a few pictures. We don't like to have a PowerPoint without very many pictures. So with that, I think we can move to discussion, and Catherine and I can field those as we can.
Okay. So I know we have the parking lot on campus off of Webster Ave. And we had talked about some different uses for that, but you're saying that we've got a similar parking area on Gray Street that's got 41 parking spaces?
That's more than that. So between Peters and Crawford, thank you. That lot is a municipal lot, and we've designated 41 spaces as an annual lottery for leasing, if that makes sense. So businesses can submit an application, and if we get more than 41, we'll do a lottery, and those that are selected get the opportunity to lease those.
And so it's basically for, like you said, it could be used for employees or customer parking or whatever they want to use it for, but it's their parking spaces?
Right.
And then do you know how many additional parking spaces there are outside?
I think I said, I don't want to not misquote myself, but I want to say 144 spots.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Total in the lot.
Okay.
I will say though, the way those are organized, they're not really used for customer parking. I mean, these are workers that lease a space to work because they work downtown, and they're provided a window hanger, and they're not provided a specific spot. They can park anywhere in that bank of 41 spots.
Okay.
But if they don't have their hanger, then they'll get a ticket.
Okay.
So they're not assigned a specific
Is
spot.
that lot used daily? Like, is it filled daily?
The Gray Street lot is used fairly well. It
Okay.
is metered, but it's metered at 25 cents an hour, so there's not a high price tag on using those spaces.
Is it the similar meter, or is it the flow meter? And so is it also where it's like a 4-hour cap or whatever?
I think there is a 4-hour.
2-hour cap. I don't
Yeah,
remember how
I'd have to
it
go
is.
back and look, sorry.
Okay.
But there is a cap on it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I drive past that a lot, and even the other night when it was like cold and kind of windy, there were still people outside. I like streeteries, I'd like to keep it going, but we do have parking spot issues. I think when Gray Street goes which in like 50 years, really shouldn't. I mean, I know, we keep kicking that can down the road, but eventually that will happen. I think that'll bring more business. We are going to SEC. We do want to build this up, and so I know some people are gonna clutch their pearls when I say this, but I really think we need a garage or something. I don't know, I mean, what do we do about that, Sean?
Actually, because that Taylor spoke to it, that study or the studies talked about structures. We have really good layouts, cost estimates. They're $20-25 million investments, and we've never had the funding. That's part of the theory behind the parking authority concept with the county, maybe with the university, where we can leverage debt financing, that sort of thing. So it's doable. We think the study actually calls for the campus corner structure to be the highest priority, either on Astor Street or on University, right just south of the Nana Hotel. Second priority was the Gray Street lot, just build that vertical, main floor retail, upper floors parking. So if all of that's in there, if you want to pursue structures, we are ready to do that. It actually went to the Economic Development Advisory Board for a year or so, and it kind of died out. So I think funding has kept us from moving forward.
Sure.
We'd love to.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've kind of, I'd say, been holding our breath on what the county was going to do with theirs. 'Cause if that was built, then it would kind of diminish the need for the city of Norman to invest in a big structure like that. But and then part of the Center City policy is tied to parking solution on Campus Corner as well. Campus Corner would become part of the Center City area upon the creation of a parking structure. And then we did talk about the ASP lot a while back and about the pricing of it and its use. And is there any update on the usage of that lot, if it's increased, and is the dollar, because we had talked about maybe the metered spaces on the street on Campus Corner can merit $1, but maybe the parking lot a block or two away can't get the same.
Sure. Yeah, we did talk about that. I'll have to go back and analyze the data some more. I didn't come
Maybe
prepared for that.
next CPT or something, we can
Yeah.
talk about that. But I do recall that being a thing. I like the idea of the streeteries being able to be shared if the businesses have an agreement, like if Syrup and Meeting Place, maybe they already are, I don't know, but if they were both wanting to use it, especially since they're next door to each other, that would be a more maximum and best use of it, I think. And I mean, my observation, because I know a lot of the criticism of it has been the barriers, which I can understand. And in many other places that I've seen these, they don't have concrete barriers. And it has a lot to do with the fact that we have a high-speed one-way street. I just want to make sure that's on the record. Cars driving fast and switching lanes erratically on Main Street, which we've all seen. Many of us have probably done it ourselves. So that's kind of why, in my opinion, that's
How dare you?
that's why that's necessary, in my opinion. If the street had slower traffic and more congestion on it, honestly, those wouldn't be necessary, and that's what I've seen in other towns like Edmond.
And kind of to that point on the barricades, a conversation I had with Councilmember Peacock, potentially the opportunity, depending on the permanency of streeteries, other barriers that could be a lot more decorative. It could be a big giant resin pot full of rocks and landscaping, something heavy enough to really slow down a vehicle if it clipped one, as opposed to concrete. But there may be, it's kind of hard in a temporary nature to invest a bunch in other products. But I think if it were to become permanent, it would be a conversation to say what other types of
We get an artist to paint them. Paint them like our
inlets. Yep.
They do it in Japan.
I would
Yes.
note too that the parking study identified that downtown Norman has a lot of parking, actually, but it's kind of, I guess, not in the exact spots that
Right.
everybody wants it. So it's not all right in front of the
Might have to
business you're
walk
going
a little
into.
bit.
So you might have to walk 2 blocks or 3 or whatnot. And so that's kind of been do we really need more? Or, because you can go down Main Street a lot of times and see a lot of empty parking spaces. So, it's a
Councilmember
interesting
Grant.
thing.
Oh,
No, yeah.
To speak to that, I have seen a car crash into that building.
I've seen it
and
crash
was
into that building,
noise.
yes, yeah, I remember.
So yeah, the concrete barriers, I get why they're there. I was gonna say, okay, so parking garage, sounds like funding. Why, can we invest in looking into like what it would be to have people park somewhere else and catch the bus? And have a more frequent trolley route, if you will? Like, is that possible? Is that, and what would that cost compared to like the operation and maintenance and building of a parking structure?
Yeah, we could look into that. I know CART ran a Second Friday Art Walk route once upon a time. They didn't do it very long, but we could certainly look into that. You just have the cost of the vehicle and then the ongoing operation costs, obviously, and then the driver maintenance costs.
They use the trolley too,
Yeah.
the bus that looks like a trolley.
Yeah. Councilmember Grant, I'm thinking that as conversations about increased densities happen around campus, where the thought of, taxing Anthony's financial prowess to say, let's figure out a way to come up with a parking structure based on today's revenue picture, that'd be a heavy lift. But if we think about what this picture could look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and say that, how shovel ready are we in terms of the parking structure that would fit on our campus corner parking lot, I think our financial picture could change as part of that SEC move, and not that we would necessarily need to be in that parking structure for 100% of the cost. If densities increase around campus corner as a result of SEC development, by all means, there could be a mechanism where they're going to recognize, in order to increase density, they're going to have to provide parking. We just happen to own the piece of property in an ideal spot to support their additional parking. It just has to go up. So I would say if we keep our eyes open, we will be on the lookout for that opportunity to say, okay, we think a development project could occur, and in order to adequately park it, there's going to be some cost sharing that go on as part of any of that increase in density in the neighborhood.
and to speak to your point, I believe it was Brenda told me that the public health license that goes to that kitchen goes to that address. So it's not a sharing thing. It's just the way the law.
We'd have to overcome that. Same with Able.
I was just saying, it's the same.
Well, maybe some state representative can
Yeah,
take a look at it for us,
you had.
whoever.
You can go.
I was just gonna mention that part of this discussion, that study that we did, or that was done and then updated over the last few years, led to us, part of the justification for buying that empty lot across the street from City Hall here. The parking study called for a parking structure to potentially, or the first one would be the Gray Street, existing Gray Street lot, build onto that, but the second one for downtown, this isn't including county plans, just City of Norman, was one right there on Gray Street, and then another one eventually in the future right here across the street. So a west side downtown Norman parking structure and an east side downtown Norman's parking structure.
And
then a county one too, apparently.
Yeah, the kind of that recognition, and I don't know who our consultants were back in that conversation, but I would argue that that Gray Street frontage is going to be beachfront value, and you probably don't want to put your parking structure on the beachfront. We've got a big, massive parking lot here in the City Hall complex. Let's go up on the City Hall complex,
Right.
and let's put something far more exciting on that big vacant lot
The plan
across the
does
street.
call for any structures we do, I think, to have ground level commercial,
Right.
make it look like it belongs.
And then to add on to that, public transportation that can get you that 3 blocks or whatever that is, because it
Yeah.
makes a difference to some particularly.
Yeah.
And I'll just tag on to the transit stuff. We are moving our transit center downtown, hopefully in the next year. So that could help with a lot of people getting to downtown. It'll be about, a block away on the periphery. So it stops here and there as routes come in and out. So I think that'll help a lot too.
That's my,
Oh, just real quick on these streeteries, I have an opinion neither way. I will tell you that the only thing I've heard is it has been criticism. It's probably been mainly from other business owners down there, and it has been because of what was on that slide. Those cons that were for the inequity, like, why are they getting to do that? Well, they're taking up, I'm just telling you that I've seen people look like they're enjoying it. It seemed all right to me, but I've heard, the people that have talked to me about it, it's only been negative. That's the only feedback that I've personally had on it, but I take it for what it is too.
Just to kind of play into what we're talking about with the parking garage structure and then the transportation piece of it, I don't know how long it would be before the city of Norman could actually build a structure, but if we're partnering with OU or if OU ends up building the one on Asp, is it possible for us to get a route that runs from that parking structure to here or this area so that people can easily walk around? Because I mean, even though I wouldn't mind walking it, it might be difficult for some people to
Right.
make that trek.
The proposed,
Exactly.
the
The
proposed route,
microtransit.
the proposed route changes, we go around Campus Corner on the east and west side and then go around campus, North Campus on the east and west side. So I think it'd be very easy for somebody to go back and forth between Campus Corner and downtown.
Yeah, okay, cool. I think that would be a quick solution.
I want a garage in front of where I want.
That's it.
I don't wanna walk.
Human
I think
nature.
OU needs it more than downtown at the moment, and he said that the study showed that that was the priority as well, so.
They got the same money.
Yeah, that lot that we have down by Campus Corner is only about 30 cars, isn't it?
No, it's big.
It's
Eight minutes.
60 is what I was gonna say. Yep.
I'll just mention that one, we were having this conversation years ago, and the structure, and goodness, 400 spaces or something in that structure in Campus Corner. So we built the surface lot as a sort of a holding spot with 60 spaces. It's one of the most underutilized parking lots
Yeah.
that we have. So we haven't been able to figure that out, or where you're gonna find 400 more parkers, but our projections back in the study were that there was a high demand. They haven't gone to that lot, so now we don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been trained not to go down by campus with a vehicle on game day.
Yeah.
And so if there were a way to have a lottery for those spaces or whatever, however we wanted to do it, and people can get those spaces on game day, you know, that would change that. I know my daughter works down, well, the youngest daughter works down on campus, and she parks actually out here in the library parking lot and walks a mile.
Yeah.
It's easier than trying to get out.
I will say, on game days, we do charge $25 a space in the Asp Avenue lot, and it's utilized. It's first come,
That's
first serve.
market.
It's not lottery, but
Yeah.
it is used on game days quite a bit.
You need to get one of those light up signs that's shaped like an
Yes.
arrow and points
Parking here.
like flashes as people are driving down
But,
Asp.
and to your point, Mayor, about how big it is, I think if you look in the parking study, again, they were playing with the square size of the parking garage. It definitely is bigger than that footprint. So,
That's good, because it just looked like a long skinny lot to me.
yeah, it is, yeah.
I forgot what it,
Yeah, just a couple things. You kind of hit the nail on the head that the whole vision of Center City is to park once and be able to walk everywhere. So
Yeah.
we do everything we can to facilitate that vision. Second thing is a lack of available parking. I mean, that's an indicator species for a good place. If you don't have a bunch of ample parking, that means that you've got a draw that people are willing to get down there, and it's taking up the stock. And the other thing that I was going to say, hold on, I wrote it down.
Some congestion is good.
Some congestion is good. It slows down the cars. It makes things more walkable. Lots of things. In terms of streeteries, I think we're only talking about the on-street parking spaces that are on Main. Like these lots, you're not going to do a streetery in these lots. You're not going to do a streetery anywhere else. So that's 266 of the 8,300 spaces. Like 3% of the spaces we're talking about here for streeteries. So I think I'd love to see more of them. I think that there are some concerns about equity and making sure everybody's got an equal shot at getting those streeteries, but I'd love to be able to set it up in such a way that the meeting place and syrup could share, if we could get over some of those hurdles, or, you know, just have these things sprinkled kind of as you go throughout downtown, because if you've been to downtown Edmond recently, they've got them all up and down their streets, and the businesses and the private citizens all say, we don't want the parking back. We love the streeteries. Let's keep the streeteries. We don't even care about the parking. So that's coming from the business side and the resident side. So I think we need to look at what they've done successfully and try to replicate that as best
as
possible.
part of that's the aesthetics.
Yeah, it really is, because they use those concrete barriers, but then they had a company come in and actually wrap them with graphics, so that it looks like a, you know, that there's a sponsorship opportunity, an advertisement opportunity. I think there's even a collaboration with the
It
Northern
has to
Arts
be
Council.
pretty, man.
It has to be pretty. Yeah, I think the devil's in the details. You know, they stop cars on the turnpike with plastic buckets full of water and sand. I mean, it's not very high tech. I think we can do something pretty similar.
So a couple of points, I guess, to that. I'm wondering what, and I haven't been to downtown Edmond in a while, but what is the mix? I'd be interested to know what the mix of businesses are on that corridor. How does that relate to what our business mix is on our main street? Because, like, if they're mostly retail or, I guess, restaurants in downtown Edmond, then maybe they have a different view than what's on our main street, which we have a bunch of law offices and kind of different mix of what expectations are. But like I do like the streetery idea. I think that like I've seen it done really well in other cities and that is very vibrant and all of that. So I'd like to see it stay if we can kind of figure out some of those equity issues and work with our downtown businesses to make sure that we are addressing those. The other thing about the Campus Corner lot, I remember us talking about potentially having, you know, some leased parking for the workers that work on Campus Corner, if we can figure out like working with those business owners, property owners, because I think they have very limited parking for their workforce. And so I think that's definitely an opportunity that we can continue to pursue. I also know, having worked on campus for a long time, that a lot of students will go to the free lots and walk. So people are willing to walk from the free lots. They're just not willing to walk from the paid lots. So like McFarland, a lot of people will park there and then walk to class. They don't want to, you know, get a parking permit for campus, and so they'll walk down, or they'll use the other church parking lot that's adjacent to the Noun, which is fairly cheap per day. So I'm wondering if there's some ways that we can look at kind of where people are parking instead of that lot, and maybe think about mixes. But depending on what happens with the McFarland thing, they may have less parking available, which may make that lot more attractive. So just
Councilmember Schuler, perhaps we'll do a little homework, grab some policies and some language in Edmond. It is fascinating that, you know, you would think we're talking orange and apples and how they are perceived downtown there versus downtown here. But we'll take a peek. We'll look at their policies. We'll see if they account for, you know, a limitation of one streetery per block, or one on each side of the street per block, those kind of limitations, and what kind of materials they allow in terms of being able to control that traffic. We did just finalize the NEPA document for a two-way gray street. So progress is happening. And when
2072.
yeah, when Councilmember Peacock had referenced, you know, the parking problem is a wonderful problem to solve. It reminded me of the immortal words of the great American philosopher Yogi Berra, that nobody ever goes downtown anymore because it's too crowded.
Yeah.
That's literally the problem we're looking at.
Yeah.
There is no parking is a myth.
Yeah, downtown Edmond doesn't have a county courthouse, so there's not the office demand there that we have here that is pretty apparently definitely have more.
And maybe that,
And it's smaller too,
yeah, that
downtown.
county parking structure frees up a lot of the pressure, and streeteries become more favorable.
I will say that the great thing about parking structures or additional parking that government agencies take on is it allows private business owners, maybe they had a surface lot that they now put building on, right?
Yes.
So it does free up other spaces if we increase the.
selling parking spaces is an excellent business, and particularly in an area where you can lease them,
Sure.
buy the time, it's steady money coming in, so.
Just to piggyback off that, yeah, currently we're giving away free parking spaces in lieu of something that could return sales tax to the city. So if you do streeteries, I mean, there's just extra square footage for businesses to return sales tax to the cities, so. we can-
Any other comments, thoughts, or anything else?
Mayor, if I may, since this revocable license would be expiring this month. It sounds like there's consensus to extend that if the business is interested, and then we can still work towards a permit program and kind of continue going down this path that we've been on. It gives us some flexibility for businesses that apply, so we can look at each site individually, and we can continue that. If
What's
that's
your
a
pleasure
consensus
on
of
that?
council.
We'll call it month to month.
Or we,
Another 6 months?
we could do 6 months, 6 months at a time, maybe, and then, because I do think two-way gray changes some of that conversation and maybe some of the things we have to do,
Yeah.
change because of that too.
Maybe in that time period, we can get some more feedback from the other property owners and businesses in downtown, just to get the general feel.
So does that mean that other businesses can apply to do this as well for the next
Yes.
6 months?
They've
Okay.
been able to, we just haven't, we've had a couple that are interested, but no one followed all the way through yet.
Okay.
Anything else? We're adjourned. Let's go to work on the other side.
You do wrong.
Yeah, just like.
Is your phone with her? All the way out there?
She's got, no, it's not with her. Let me go get her.
Just tell her to come on, we're starting. Just yellow.
Need that, do we? Good evening, and welcome to the City Council, Norman Utilities Authority, Norman Municipal Authority, and Norman Tax Increment Finance Authority meeting of November 8, 2022. This is a regular session of the City Council where business will be conducted. House rules are posted in the back of the room. Attendees are asked to abide by said rules throughout the meeting. Outbursts and/or interruptions will not be tolerated by any person. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Studley.
Here.
Councilmember Schuler.
Here.
Councilmember Lynn.
Here.
Councilmember Grant.
Here.
Councilmember Tortorello.
Here.
Councilmember Foreman.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Peacock.
Here.
Mayor Hykala.
Here. Thank you, ma'am. Would you now join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started, I want to make a couple of brief announcements. We have had some equipment failure today with our cameras, so we will be filming from a video camera. The picture on the screen should be good, but the audio may be a little off. I'll remind council to speak directly into your mic so that the microphone on the recorder can pick up the sound. Additionally, the council agenda was amended yesterday to remove item 18 regarding the purchase of public safety equipment for the police department. Council will be discussing such purchase at next week's council study session. Now we have council announcements. Councilmember, do you have any announcements?
Yes. So first, I want to thank everyone that went out and voted. You have about 20 minutes, 28 minutes left if you want to go. The polls close at 7. It was an important election, and I'm excited to join some watch parties afterwards and see who wins. I also want to thank Christy Shepard for her willingness to serve on our Social and Voluntary Services Commission. And then I also want to remind everyone that there is a mutual aid fair this weekend that's hosted by Red Dirt Collective. It's this Saturday, November the 12th from 12 to 3. They will give away free groceries, clothing, cleaning supplies, health and hygiene products, pet food, books, haircuts, and bike repairs. You can also sign up for SNAP benefits, and mental and physical health resources will be available. They will have carnival games, face painting, crafts, and a lunch will be provided. And a selfie station. I wrote an autocorrect changed it to selfish station. I was like, that doesn't make sense. So anyways, that group does a lot of good work in our community. They have a community garden that's near the area. I've been at every one of them, so please come out, come join us. If you want to volunteer, if you're not in need, but you want to have a place to come and volunteer at, this is your place. You can get hooked up with some really good groups. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing about election night. So thank you for everyone who went out and voted today. Like Councilmember Studley said, it is a big election. We have lots of things on the ballot. So my hope is that you actually turned the page over and voted all the way down your ballot. So we can't forget about our judges and other things, and then we'll have some upcoming municipal elections at the turn of the year. The other thing that I want to say is thank you to 2 Ward 2 members for serving on their continued service on boards and commissions. We have Alva Brackus on the Norman Forward Oversight Committee, and then Erica Bird on our Planning Commission, and she is the chair of that commission and does a fantastic job. So thank you both for your service. No other announcements.
Councilmember?
I just want to wish a happy early Veterans Day to everybody, all the veterans in our community, and we appreciate your service. Thank you.
Councilmember?
Yes, we have another art walk this Friday. It will be from 6 to 9. The Norman Arts Council is doing a fundraiser t-shirt to help raise funds for artist-led projects, so consider picking one up. I would also like to thank Ward 4 residents for their continued commitment to serving on the following boards: Board of Adjustment with Brad Worcester, Norman Ford Citizens Finance Board, Cindy Rogers, Norman Regional Housing Authority, Joan Greene. And then lastly, I've gotten a few calls about our carport ordinance, and we've been working on it. And I just want to let folks know that tune in on November 10th at Oversight Committee to hear us talking more about it. December 8th, Planning Commission will discuss it again. And around January 23rd, we should be voting on it. So we are listening, we know the weather's turning, and we're trying to make them affordable and accessible. And also thank you to those who voted. That's it for us.
I'd like to remind everyone that Friday is Veterans Day. If you know anybody who served anytime, any conflicts, go out, reach and shake their hands and thank them from the service. It's an important day for all of us. From here on council, we've got 3 veterans, including myself, who served. And it's a solemn day, and it's a day that we remember everybody we served with that didn't come back. It's not Memorial Day, but still, we need to remember everybody that we left in Iraq or Afghanistan or any foreign country that never made it back home. And to all the veterans in the community, have a happy Friday, and we thank you for your service.
Councilmember?
No comments.
Councilmember Hall?
Yes, also want to remind everybody, you got 25 minutes or 24 to get out and vote, so you still have time to get out there. There's plenty of information about all the different items that are on there, and definitely be sure to turn it over if you got a ballot here in Norman. So I also want to just mention that one of the things Oklahoma does extremely well actually is our election integrity in the state of Oklahoma. We have a very good election system in this state, and I really appreciate all the people that volunteer, the poll workers, and all the people that make our elections possible. I really enjoy voting in person so that I can talk to the people that are working and converse. My polling place is a very low turnout polling place, so it's not as busy as others. So I really enjoy that interaction, and I appreciate the time that those folks volunteer and help us pull this off every time. So thank you. And also would just mention on the Veterans Day parade here in Norman, I believe is the 13th. So Reese Park is the Veterans Memorial for Cleveland County. So I believe it's starting south of there and will end at the park at the memorial. So anybody interested in that, I definitely encourage you to attend. Thank you.
No comments for Ward 8.
None from the mayor. All right, consent docket. I need a motion, please, to place items 1 through 15 on the consent docket.
So moved.
Have a motion and second. The motion on the floor is to place items 1 through 15 on the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your votes. Too fast.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to place items 1 through 15 on the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent docket.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and second. Are there any comments from council regarding any item on the consent docket? Hearing none. The motion on the floor is to approve the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Non-consent items. Item 16, consideration of adoption, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number 0222311 upon second and final reading to grant special use for a church, temple, or other place of worship in the R1 Single Family Dwelling District for property located at 4600 36th Avenue Northwest. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading.
So moved.
I have a motion and second. Is there a representative of the applicant to make a presentation?
Good evening. I'm Rick McKinney with McKinney Partnership, 3600 West Main Street here in Norman. I'm pleased to present this again tonight. These are slides prepared by the city. This just shows the general location of the tract, which is on the north end of 36th Street, close to Franklin Road. It's an existing church. This is the existing site plan. The first phase in the middle of the image there was done in 2005. The second phase was done in 2012. And what we're talking to you tonight about is because this is permissive use on R1 zoning, we are modifying the originally submitted site plan, and so this is for a site plan amendment. This shows what we plan to do to the project. In the upper right is what we're calling the church offices, and it's called the Orchard. It's actually a convention, meeting center, children's hall, things like that. And then on the right-hand side, that is an extension to an existing fellowship hall, which will create our interim sanctuary, and that's about 4,300 square feet. All combined, we're looking about 7,900 square feet for the upper building and 4,300 square feet for the sanctuary addition. A couple of images that'll show, this is the existing view from 36th Avenue. And this is the extension of the sanctuary coming east towards 36th. Similar shapes, we've taken the character of the architecture and just used that throughout the addition. This is a front view right from the main entry. The existing fellowship hall is on the left, and their 2012 education wing is in the background on the right. And this would be our addition of the sanctuary coming forward on the left, and then the offices and the orchard on the right-hand side. This is another view, bird's eye view from the northeast. Again, the two extensions. So basically, we're changing the initial idea for the church was to put a larger sanctuary by the previous church owners and the previous architect. And right now we're looking at doing an extension on the sanctuary, and we're putting the offices on the front right where their sanctuary was going to go. And then we're also, this is one of the two comments were made in our pre-development meeting. One was about site lighting, which we addressed satisfactorily, I believe. We'll have sharp cutoff lights that meet all the city standards. And the blue lines across the top of the page and towards the middle, that's an existing drainage system. It's a fairly robust system. 8 and 12, 15-inch lines tie into that horizontal line, which is a 30-inch diameter drain line. And this was added in the 2012 edition to address the drainage concerns on the site. One thing that developed was that when they installed that 2012 drainage system, they created, with earthwork, they created large dishes around the inlets. Well, the dirt got pushed up, and unfortunately it got pushed up to the neighbors on the west. And it prevented runoff from going to those drains that would have worked perfectly if the water could have got there. And so we have had the site fully surveyed in detail all along that west property line. I have met with all of the property owners on the west side, and we have a mutual agreement. What would work best for them would be if we could extend 6-inch lines, those 3 lines on the far left, 6-inch lines to 10 by 10 inlets. And there's plenty of fall to get from their low point in their backyard at the fence line to our existing inlets. We have 2 inlets there just to the left of that pavilion, that rectangular box. So we would extend those 3 lots right there, those 3 drains, I'm sorry. And then the 5th lot up towards the upper right left-hand corner, it has enough fall where it drains naturally, so it does not require a drain. So that's what we're proposing. They like that idea. We have to, there's an easement back there, so we've got to deal with the easement because we would be putting private drains within that easement. We have to get permission. Another concern is if we were to, another solution would be to cut the grade down in that where the dirt was pushed up so water could naturally flow. Well, the dirt's up about 18 inches in some places, and so we don't know how deep those utilities are in that easement. So one of those 2 solutions will work, and we commit to doing that to the neighbors, and they're fine with that. So that's the drainage problem that is of a concern. The only other issue I might mention, and I talked to City about this, was the office orchard building, the green at the upper right-hand corner. We are wrestling with the budget like most people are now. And that may require a modification. Like I say, now we show about 7,900 feet on the ground. We may go to a single-story building and have 8,900 feet on the ground. It depends on where the budget comes in. So, and I talked to the city. I said, should we wait and see? And they said, no, go ahead and submit. So we're here tonight to ask for your approval of this request for a site plan amendment. I'll answer any questions.
Council members?
Mine was about the protest letter. I did read that. It's about the draining, so I appreciate you going into detail about that. So that answered the questions I had about that, so I feel pretty comfortable with that response. Thank you.
Council member?
Yes, I had a similar question about the drainage, because that seemed to be the highlight of the concerns during pre-development and planning commission. I did want to ask about, in the staff report, it does talk about detention ponds. So it says the additional development and paving areas can be accommodated with the detention ponds that have been sized for this project. Are there, I can't read this as it was, but where are the detention?
They don't show it very well. It's on the far right-hand side of the entrance off of 36, those 2 triangular shapes.
Okay.
Those are about 4 feet deep, and they're dry detention. They don't hold water, attract birds and mosquitoes and things like that. So they're just dry detention, and the capacity was sized to handle this entire site. And one more thing I'd mention is the extension of the Fellowship Hall to that lower green addition is an interim solution for our sanctuary. The master plan is to put a larger sanctuary on the far left side of the education building, which is dashed in. And that's a tentative area where it may go, but it hasn't gone any further than that right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I really appreciate you addressing the issues with the neighbors and, working with them as their concerns have come up, and then kind of managing a solution to help move that water to an appropriate location. So thank you.
And I committed to them, we'll stay in close contact as this thing builds out, and they'll be informed of everything that happens.
Further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any, this is an opportunity for members of the public to make comments regarding this item. Are there any speakers?
Stephen Ellis? Okay. John? Okay. That's it.
Hearing none. Are there any final comments from council? The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
Motion to adopt.
I have a motion and second. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Excellent, thank you. Item 17, consideration of adoption, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number 0222315 on second and final reading, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, rezoning property located at 401 South University Boulevard from CCFBC, Center City Form-Based Code, to CCPUD, Center City Planned Unit Development. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Is there a representative of the applicant to make a presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Sean Regory, representing McFarland United Methodist Church. And I'll tell a story about that I just told at Planning Commission, but I want to tell it again. Usually, when I come to these items to present things, the applicant usually asks me, how many people should I bring to speak in support, or who should come to support? And I stopped myself this time, because usually I say, well, as many as you can bring would be great, right? Not a good idea on this one, because United Methodist Church of McFarland is enormously beloved. And what they do as the focus of what I hope you will approve tonight is at the core of it. It's mission work. And tonight we have a number of them with you. If you are here with McFarland, if you will raise your hand, please. All right, thank you. And again, if I had told Mr. Foster to bring as many as he could, I think they would have been lined out into Gray Street and beyond, because it's that beloved of an institution and the work they do. So I would be very brief tonight. I'll introduce items, show you a couple of items, and then Rick McKinney, who did the architecture, is going to speak about it, and then Mr. Rod Foster will speak, and then we'll conclude. So let me take you through it. This is the location. We are in Ward 4 tonight, at the corner of Sims and University Boulevard at McFarland Church. I think everybody knows the iconic McFarland Church building that is just an incredible structure at that location. We are on the northwest side of it, at a little building called the Alderman House, and we are replacing that building with a new proposed building to be the Mission Center, which will be a greatly robust version of what they do now, but really no different than what they do now. They've done that for many years there. And if you have time ever to go on a Saturday morning or on a weekday evening to go with their mobile food pantry, I would encourage you to do that, because it is a moving experience. So at this site, you'll see on the left is the city GIS. There is a little building there right on the inside of it. We're going to be replacing that. The outlined red is the site. On the left is just an aerial view of the same thing. The yellow is the outline of the site. Why are we here tonight? Well, we're here because we need a Center City Form-Based Code PUD, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But on the left, there is no 2025 change. Again, this is a church function, more or less, of mission work. It's institution on 2025. We're not changing that at all. Why we're here is on the right. This was moved into Center City Form-Based Code, which you're all very familiar with, I'm sure. We were basically questioning whether we needed to do a PUD, and then when we started looking at the design, we were not on the build to lines, if you're familiar with that, so we needed a PUD for that reason. It was also wondered if the use fit it. I think we actually have an argument that the use is probably fitting, because under the Center City Code, civic uses is what this is allowed for, and other things, but civic does include worship, government functions, similar community uses. I think we probably fit the use pretty well, but the build to line needs to be modified to allow the structure, so we are here for the form-based code as a Center City PUD. So this is the site plan in context. You see it on the left. I'm not going to go into detail because Rick is going to do that for us in just a moment. I would point out, though, there is a public alley in between, and you see it coming across the backside of McFarland that connects the two north-south streets. That will remain unchanged. We're not doing anything with the public alley. It will remain as it is. We're planning on work beyond the public alley, again, in the yellow outline and the red outline building. So with that, I want to bring Rick McKinney up to talk in detail about the site planning and to talk about changes we made in the architecture since Planning Commission, because we heard from a neighbor that wanted some more focus to that. So Rick.
Thank you, Sean. Again, Rick McKinney at 3600 West Main Street. Our firm has had the pleasure of working with McFarland going on about 7 or 8 years on this project. It's been a huge study and truly a rewarding project for our staff, and the people at McFarland been, like he alluded to, just been exceptional and so passionate about this project. So it's an honor to present this tonight. The floor plan, as you see here, is roughly 5,000 square feet per floor. It's two-story. And our initial intent on the architectural direction on this project was to create a building that had a residential character. We used a lot of the same materials that are on the Aldersgate house right now. One thing that I'm really pleased about is the hailstorm. There's light at the end of those tunnels, but the hailstorm, they had to replace their whole roof, and we're in the midst of doing that right now. But they had previously put a very nice, high-quality slate-looking material over the entire church, custom-made, and the majority of it is still in good shape. And so we talked to the manufacturer. They are going to honor the warranty for us to reuse those shingles on this new building. And so the two roofs will match, what I think is a really nice feature. So it really appears like a green slate. We're using red brick. We've got stucco on the upper portions of the building, residential style windows, and some front porch elements on as well. But the general site planning is, right now, if you've ever seen the food pantry in operation, the patrons line up from the east and they all circulate to the west to pick up their food, especially after COVID, because most of them were in their car to pick up their food. They used to park across the street and come across. One thing this site plan has done, it's created more stack space in that wide drive on the east side of the building. And people can pre-call in and reserve their orders, and they'll be ready for them, or they can come and shop. They can literally shop within that middle portion. And then they can go to their car and they can drive through, and their food will be checked out and then loaded into their car safely. That drive also will receive delivery trucks. It's usually small panel vans, but a couple times a month there will be a semi-truck that'll deliver from Oklahoma City. And it will pull in from the south, it'll head out to the north, it'll unload right there. And it's, like I say, just twice a month, I believe. So the traffic will be much improved. It'll free up the alley more than it is now, because it does get congested during those times, which is somewhat of a concern. So this should abate a lot of that. The second floor, the bottom floor is all food pantry that receives food, and then they serve it out to the patrons as they come. The second floor is kind of a work in progress. It will be mission, it may be health oriented, it may be dental oriented, it may be counseling oriented. And so we have, McFarland has a missions director, and so that is a current topic of what are we going to do with that space. So the second floor will be built out initially as shell space to receive these mission facilities upstairs. So it'll be handicap accessible, elevator, 2 sets of stairs. And so we're really pleased about the services this will provide. Later on, I'm going to show you a few views this is a view from the northwest. Again, we're using the residential scale modular brick, stucco up above the windows. You can see the green slate. You can see the slate on McFarland. This is almost photorealistic. This is what it will look like. We have historic light poles that will be extended around the site that go all the way around McFarland right now. A particular note is the drainage, and I'll talk about the specific drainage, but in the foreground here on that corner, a lot of our surface water on the front of the building will be collected into this rain garden and filtered through into the soil and collected that way. The balance of all of the runoff will be collected in gutters. It'll be taken down into the ground, into drain pipes, and it goes into a central drain back to a detention area, which I'll show you here in a moment, that will collect all of that water. So the net result, and we're also collecting all of the water from that driveway we showed you on the east side. That'll have quite a bit of runoff, but we're going to collect all of that. It goes back into the detention area on the east side of the space, the facility. This is from the southwest, and those are those porch elements. The element on the left is where we go in for the food pantry. The element on the right is the entry for the mission center, and the elevator goes up on that side. This is a view from the northeast. Mechanical systems will be screened. We do have some covered areas for shelter when food's being picked up by the patrons or received in deliveries. There won't be any steps, any trip hazards there, so you can just roll out right into your car. This is a diagram of the detention that we're going to be doing. On the right, the light green is the existing detention pond that McFarland built years ago, and it works fine. What we're doing is we're enlarging that with a fairly flat bottom so it can be used for play space. But it also is a dry detention area that I mentioned previously tonight. The hash mark line that goes across the site, that is the primary drain line that goes from the building on the left and takes water to the inlet and to the detention area. And then around the building, the blue diagrams, that shows you the flow of how we're going to be collecting that water. And it all is brought around the building to that central point on the east side drive. And then all of that directed to the detention facility. And the whole intention of that is to just slow down the water. We're not retaining it, we're detaining it so we can hold our water and everybody else's water goes downstream and then ours comes out at a timed release. So our SMC has done a wonderful job of designing that. Last thing I'd like to mention is the rain garden, upper left corner of the building. That is, there's a landscape architect, Dave Edwards, that is a member of the church, who actually engineered and designed that, worked closely with us and with the civil engineers on that. So that rain garden system ties beautifully with the drainage system that we have designed. So like I say, the end result is there'll be less drainage coming off this site than there is today. So it's a positive. It's not a net zero, it's less than that. So. And I'd like to introduce Rod Foster, a member of the church, to Tilly.
May I ask a question freely? In what would seem to me to be the southwest corner of that, where you had the utility picture, that right there, the sidewalk doesn't go and hook to this other sidewalk. Is there a way for somebody who's in a chair or not being able to climb that curb to get around without going into the street? Or is that just the way the picture is?
You mean to go around the mechanical units?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a little bit deceptive, but that sidewalk flushes out with the driveway. So but as far as you're saying they'd have to go out in the drive lane, there shouldn't be any patrons that utilize this building going that way. That they are parking over in the west parking lot across the street, and they're coming in the front door, and then they would go out the front door, they get their car, they pull around and receive their groceries. But there's nobody that would walk. If they want to carry their groceries to their car, they can take them right from the food pantry and take them to their car if they like to do that. But there shouldn't be any patrons that walk around the building that way. But that being said, I think you've got a great point. Should somebody do that, we'll look at maybe shifting that mechanical down maybe 3 feet and providing an accessible walkway.
It'd just be an easy thing, because it's hard in a chair to get around sometimes, and you get
I was going to point that out. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. That's
just
not
an
an issue.
observation. Thank you, sir.
Good, very good point. Any other questions? Okay. Rod Foster.
Here we go. My name's Rod Foster. I head the building committee for this project and some other work we're doing in the church as well. I want to give you just a brief couple of slides just to give you a feel for the food pantry. If you haven't had a chance to go by there and see how it works, might make you appreciate kind of what people are kind of going through. McFarland Food Pantry actually began in about 1995, and it was in a small room in the church, and it gradually grew and grew. And it was about to outgrow that area. And this building that we've been talking about, we call it Aldersgate House, we moved in there in 2013 as a way to really kind of grow and expand and kind of deal with what was going on. And very quickly, that became full. We converted our mechanical storage room next door. The food pantry's taken over that. I mean, so it's just been something that within the church has been a great ministry, and people have really are participating in that. And One of the things that, I'll put a few slides up here, but one of the things that people do today, because about 2.5 years ago, we used to do all this in that house. And the pandemic came along, and we had to figure out how to deal with that. And so we basically went to drive-up only. So no one goes in the building today. Everyone has to drive up, and we now shuttle food out. One of the things that you'll see on some of these numbers is just to give you a feel for the number of unique families, 2,400 families, different families with about 4 people per family on average. We have we call it mobile food pantry. About 7 years ago, it came to someone in our church's attention who's a former principal that some of the schools were needing help. And so they now go out to the schools. Those 4 schools is where we are now. They alternate those, so they'll go one school once a month, and then they just go to the others. And they also are open on a couple of Saturdays per month because some of the parents can't get there in time for them to get some groceries. So that's been a real growing thing. There's other schools that would like to participate. It's a little beyond our capacity right now, but there's a need there as well. One of the things that I'm always impressed whenever I see these numbers is the amount of food that goes through that area. We get about 250,000 pounds a year from the food bank. And that truck you see there in your picture, that's the semi that Rick mentioned that comes a couple of times a month. And all these people are unloading. One of the things you can see kind of behind these guys is you can see there's a ramp that goes up there. That was the original handicap ramp for getting in that building. And so right now, all of this food goes up that ramp into the building, comes back down that ramp, out to the curb in bags. And so it's a real operation to deal with it. That's one of the things we're anxious to see in the design of the new building. It's all flat. There's no ramps up, there's no ramps down, there's no steps up, there's no steps down for the clients. And so we're trying to make it operate better, but be easier for our volunteers and for the clients. I have to give a shout out to Target, Homeland, and Aldi. If you look at the amount of food that they provide to our food pantry, unbelievable. It's all food that would go to waste, where expiration dates are coming close. Produce that if it doesn't get used in a couple of days, it won't be good. And so a real effort to find a home for that. The other thing I'd mention is one of the things that you'll find that between a lot of different food pantries in Norman is it's kind of a team thing. Whenever we get a truck drive up and it's got more stuff than we can handle, or we go to Target and they load us down and we don't have a place for it, we work with Food and Shelter, Mission Norman. So those organizations, we are watching out for each other and working with each other so that the food doesn't go to waste. So that a lot of this just happens behind the scenes and all the people know each other and that's just part of the operation. The last thing is, and this is where Sean said, there's 150 people that work there. Not everybody's there every day. But like I say, you could probably have filled this with those people. They are committed. There's people there every day. There's some people, the same people that are there every day that just, this is what they do. And you can see a little bit of the crowded nature, people receiving, putting away things, sorting, so a number of activities that go on. So it is one of the primary missions of our church right now, and we appreciate your support and we're anxious to be able to do this. Sean and Ron.
All right, so let's conclude real quick. I just want to voice your staff report. Thank you, Rod. And this did go to Planning Commission with unanimous approval. We had one speaker, which was a neighbor, Catty Corner, that spoke to some concerns about the architecture, and you heard Rick talk about how we address those. No neighbors attended pre-development, unanimous Planning Commission. A couple of quotes from the staff report: expansion of the community, food pantry, and a variety of social outreach programs. A center that represents the feel of the residential area while being large enough to allow for expanded social outreach services needed in the community. I think it is safe to say that McFarland has done its job for years and years and generations, and they are committed to do it again in the future in a much more robust way. So with that, we would appreciate your support tonight. We're all here to answer any questions you have, and we're happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Holman.
Yeah, just a few questions. Appreciate the mention about and question about ADA issues. So sounds like the whole site though is going to be compliant with all current ADA standards, and I guess no step, I don't know what it's called necessarily when it's level like that, but when it's completely level like that. Zero entry, yes. So very good to hear that. The new alley access, it's not a new curb cut. There's a curb cut there, I assume, from the house that would have been there a long time ago.
There, the curb cut, Councilmember,
on Sims.
Right. On Sims, that is a new curb cut. So on Sims, that is, let me get to the large.
There's a existing little gravel and a cut there today that I think it looks like it would have been from an older
Yeah,
property.
you're talking about, I don't have a good viewpoint of it here.
You can't see it as well
You're
now.
talking about right up in this area, right up in here. Yeah.
So I did have just a question from staff about, we're always kind of concerned about creating any new curb cuts. The traffic on this, if I heard correctly, traffic will come in through the alleyway and move to the north. There will be nobody entering into this from Sims. Is that how it's supposed to work?
That's correct, Councilman. That's the intention. Now,
All
I
traffic-
never obligate that nobody will ever do that. Because
Sure.
drivers
Right.
do what they will do.
I know it will happen for sure.
Right.
But the idea is that traffic is all going out on Sims.
That is correct, Councilman.
Okay.
Yes.
And then is there an impact on the playground at all? I couldn't really tell with the alignment.
No, there is potentially a slight shift. We were looking at that at one point of a few feet maybe, but I don't believe there will be much of an impact, if any at all. Our hope is no.
Okay.
Lowering play area was a little bit lower.
I assume you heard that play area may
Yes.
be a little bit lower.
Okay.
But no, we don't intend any impact on that.
Okay. And then might have staff just comment about the curb cut.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sean O'Leary, Director of Public Works. Councilmember Holman, we reviewed the site plan, really had no concerns for the same reasons you mentioned, the circulation of the site. It's a fairly low volume street there, and we don't see their use as increasing that any concern. So our staff, traffic engineers, recommended approval of the entire site plan, including all the accessibility concerns that we discussed earlier. Might mention, just from my past experience as an ADA coordinator, churches are exempt from the Americans with Disabilities Act. So kudos to this church and many of our churches for voluntarily doing that. And these folks are doing it in a big way and for all the right reasons. But they wouldn't have to if they chose not to.
Didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Councilmember Peacock.
Just real quickly, can you speak to the desire to seek a variance on the Bill 2 line?
I think, Councilman, it was really a reflection of the existing. If you look at the existing house is right just inset right there. I think it was really just to try to keep some semblance of what was there before, keep that front yard a little bit. I don't know if, Rick, you have any other comments about that? No, so we wanted to pay some homage to the Alderman house that has been there so long.
Appreciate the answer.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Schuler.
Yeah, my questions were addressed. I was going to ask some questions about the new curb cut and then the flow of traffic on the site plan. So those have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Yeah, in regards to that traffic flow, will you have signage that explains how people are supposed to drive through this area?
I believe we do intend to have some signage. I can't show you any tonight. We don't have anything to show you tonight, but that is the intention, yes.
But that alley is pretty much one way. Well, where you're driving to pick up your groceries
Yeah,
and do
that-
the drop off.
I apologize. Yes, the alley goes both ways, so it is a two-way alley. And again, I really wouldn't want to represent that nobody's ever going to turn in from either direction, from one direction to the other. I think you will see directional traffic both ways. But I think if you could see their operation, and Rod kind of showed it, the pictures. On the actual day of pickup, and when you would see cars tend to see what's happening right there, you kind of see an image of it. I think it would be pretty obvious as to which direction the flow is happening, and I don't suspect there would be a problem from that as they see it work out.
That's it for me.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, this is an opportunity for members of the public to make to make comments regarding the site. Are there any speakers, Madam Clerk?
Cindy Rogers.
Cindy Rogers, Ward 4. This is great and wonderful, and I love all the ADA stuff. The above and beyond water detention, which I hope can inspire us to require that of all new infill to do better than what's there, because we need to do better. And I just want to thank the members, these lovely people, for all they do for the community.
John High.
I did also recommend.
You should work on that.
Oh, sorry about that. You got anything on for me?
It should be on.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's John High. I also would like to recommend, this place is going to be great. I have gone up that ramp they're talking about where they leave for food. It's not really fun in a wheelchair, so I know they're having fun with food going up and everything. So with it being level ground like that, it's been great. And they look like they're looking for all the situations when it comes to ADA. Even on the second floor, I heard about that, and it was really good, because a lot of people forget about the second floor. So they're doing a great job, and I recommend it 110%. My son went to McFarland when he was growing up, all through kindergarten, all the way through pre-K, even kindergarten, So it's a real nice place, and there are really good attitudes for everybody.
Thank you, sir. And that's all. Any final comments from council?
Yeah.
Councilmember Grant?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you, McFarland, for listening to the neighbors and taking that feedback and doing better. And then also I did have somebody reach out to me via email, kind of questioning why we would approve this. And I just want to read out a list of uses that I think you're thinking about for your second floor, as you mentioned earlier, like dental, counseling. Just for the folks at home to know, like, what can be offered there. So intake and assessment services, case management services, resource development services, community education services, job placement services, volunteer training, internship programs, professional development programs and services, housing supportive services, emergency supportive services, office uses, counseling services, professional support services, education classes, organization services, medical and well-being care clinics, offices and services, nonprofit ancillary child care services, meeting space for support, recovery, and community organizations. All of which I really appreciate and think our community needs, and I hope the folks listening at home who were questioning this can see the value of having a little bit extra at a time like this. So thank you.
Councilmember Sadler?
Yes, so I also wanted to thank you guys for doing this. You are wonderful community partners. You don't have to be a member to receive the support and the benefits that you guys offer in our community, and that speaks volumes. I love the possibility of what the second floor has to offer. Councilmember Grant just listed all of those services, and it's pretty incredible to think about what you guys can continue to offer and grow into in this community, because you are just one of the most exceptional community partners I've seen here, outside of Food and Shelter, which I have to give them props, but you guys partner with them as well. And so it's just a really wonderful thing to watch, and you guys practice what you preach in your doors, and I really, really appreciate that, and it's a nice thing to see in our community. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to vote yes for this.
Councilmember Schuler?
Yes, I'm just going to kind of pile on the praise for McFarland and the work that y'all do. I think that it's been really clear to a lot of people since the pandemic about the need for facilities like this with individuals experiencing food insecurity, and then not to mention what could potentially go on and provide extra services to the community above and beyond what you're already doing with that second floor addition. And I think, to hear Rod talk about, the numbers of the food that goes in and out of that facility, I think that it's pretty astonishing with kind of your current facility. And so I'm only anticipating that you will be able to serve more people with this expanded capacity. And I think, talking also about the community partnerships that you have created, the way that you work with other facilities within our community to make sure that, items do not go unused or anything like that, is fantastic. And I would also like to say that I think you are a shining light for what our faith-based community is doing in Norman. And so that I hope other churches and faith-based organizations are looking to you as kind of the model that is being set, where you can step up where there is a need and continue to provide expanded services. So I'm exuberantly happy to vote yes and approve this project. Thank you for all the work that you do.
Councilmember Holman.
Thank you. I just also want to extend a thank you for providing this needed service in our community. The efforts of your congregation and other groups in town and nonprofits means we're in a situation where the city is not having to explore building a food pantry or operating one. And so that's something we've talked a lot about, is if we're able to have our nonprofits, church organizations, and private businesses helping to address those issues, it means the city government doesn't have to be as directly involved. And that's kind of what we want. We want to see the community coming together to address these issues we have in our city. And I agree fully. You're leading by example, and I really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
All right. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
Excellent. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject, the ordinance on final reading.
Motion to adopt. Second.
Motion's in second. Motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Miscellaneous comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address City Council. Due to the Open Meeting Act regulations, Council is not able to participate in discussion during miscellaneous comments. Remarks should be directed to the Council as a whole and limited to 3 minutes or less. Do we have any signed up?
Yes, sir, we do. Start with Stephen Ellis.
Stephen Ellis, Ward 4. While everybody's filing out, I want to say congratulations to McFarland, one of the great community partners here. One of the reasons I signed up tonight was it was before that the police items got pulled, and I understand there's going to be a study session on that, and I hope that when the study session does come around, the City Council will have some testimony and look at some of the evidence about questions of police militarization and the effects that things like worrying a lot about low probability events like you would use an armored vehicle or a bomb robot or something on, the effect that it has on the sort of psychology of policing in a town. So hopefully we'll get a chance to sort of fully vet out those issues before we have a vote on that kind of issue. And so hopefully going forward, we'll continue to make progress like we did tonight, and everybody gets to go look at the election parties. So have fun.
Mark Campbell, is Mark here? I don't think I've seen him. Lisa Schmidt.
My name is Lisa Schmidt. I live at 1330 Salisbury in Ward 2. I've lived other places, but I'm pretty much a lifelong Norman resident. I was born at Norman Municipal Hospital. I'm a graduate of the Norman Public Schools. I have 2 OU degrees, including one in law enforcement administration. I own a home in Norman. I worship here. I work here. I shop here. I socialize. I minister here, and I vote here. And I only include all of that so it's clear that I was not bussed in, let in, or shipped in to give the following testimony. 12 years ago, I was here for the entire 3.5-hour discussion when the first time that a proclamation for the LGBTQ History Month was proposed to the Norman City Council. With a much more conservative council than sits here today, it was approved by a vote of 8-1. Over the years, I've been at meetings for other agenda items and realized that the annual proclamation was on the agenda and passed without comment. And I thought, good, proclamations showing respect for groups and populations who have and continue to strengthen our community as business owners, educators, police officers, volunteers, faith leaders, parents. Proclamations that don't cost anything, don't grant anybody any particular rights or protections, should pass without dissent. Good for Norman. I was surprised to hear that after 12 years, our current council refused to sign or recognize the annual proclamation. I haven't been able to find any reasons, comments, explanation. It appears that the mayor was willing to approve of a proclamation recognizing Suicide Prevention Month that would mention that people who are gay, especially young people, are statistically more likely to die by suicide. So instead of a proclamation of respect and inclusiveness, he closed with a comment that bullying is bad, and I agree. I applaud the council members who mentioned LGBTQ2S History Month in their remarks at last month's meeting. I had enormous respect and admiration watching Nancy Harrington, the mother of Zach Harrington, who died by suicide shortly after that meeting 12 years ago, as she accepted that proclamation. I encourage all of you to find and watch the documentary Broken Heartland about this episode in Norman's history. And I remember the note I received on the day of that council meeting in 2010 from Alan Sutherland, then pastor of St. Michael Episcopal Church here in Norman. Lisa, be assured of my prayers as you prepare and go into tonight's meeting. I hope the support and vote for the proclamation is positive. Yet even if the council does not recognize the proclamation, please remember that God's proclamation of love for all his children is for eternity and not just 1 month. And that does not need any ratification by any council. Take care and let me know how it goes. Please know that you have only given more power to this proclamation by refusing to acknowledge it. Please know that this will only motivate people to see that it is presented next October, and a whole lot of us will be here to support it. And I thank you for both those things.
Madam, you've run out of time.
Please know what happened.
Ma'am?
By refusing to consider the proclamation is seen and will be remembered.
Ma'am, you're out of time. Thank you.
Cindy Rogers.
Still Ward 4, still Cindy Rogers. It's tough to follow Lisa, so I agree with everything she said there. But I actually wanted to talk about thanking council for taking item 18 concerning the, what seemed to be to many of us, surprise purchase of some police equipment, including the Bearcat. We've had lots of discussions about this in the past. Very emotional. There's people strongly, yeah, we have to have it. People strongly, no, there's no way we can have it. Which of course leaves the middle ground of what will it take for people in the community to be comfortable with equipping our police as they stand, as they're perceived in the community, to have access for those vehicles, or a vehicle of that sort. So obviously there's concern about oversight and deployment, and then, you know, when bad things happen, and you know after the fact. So I think there's a lot of room for us to have those discussions, to look at the psychological literature, to look at the police deployment literature, And most importantly, to set up the mechanisms and the oversight and the accountability so people can feel like that makes them feel safer. And we know that there's a segment of our community that doesn't feel safe the way policing operates in our town. We have a history of the sundown town that's not gone. And I hope that we can work very hard to not just pay lip service to that, but to truly address those concerns so Norman is safer and better for everybody, police and residents. So the thought of deploying military-style equipment on residents of Norman, particularly ones who may be in mental distress, that's alarming to me. So let's get there. Thank you.
Joshua Atkinson. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that might be. Molly Jones. Scott Dixon. John.
John, hi. Y'all know me, all of y'all know me. And I was been sitting through the meeting that we just had, the conference meeting in there, and I was thinking, what you're wanting people to use parking. Now, what does it take to get to parking spots? It takes sidewalks. And our sidewalks on here in downtown Norman are not in good shape. We need to start looking at those. If we want people to walk on them to get these parking spots, you gotta give them good sidewalks. That makes sense, don't it? And that's one thing that y'all didn't address in the situation when y'all were talking about it. I always look at what it takes to get to where we want to go. And the other thing is that people, come on out there, come on. A crosswalk means behind the crosswalk, not blocking it and saying, well, I don't know where to go because I filled that too far and now I can't back up. And I'm blocking you from crossing over to get to the other side. And this happens a lot. And we need to do more enforcement on this. It just really needs to be in place for. So those are the two things I want to look at. And the third thing is, we really need to raise that time back to 5 minutes. I know we had a problem where we had people talking too long. We had things like that. On things like that, then let's knock it back down. But you want to hear your public all the time. And if you're cutting them off, how do you think the people that are hearing you? You cut them off. You cut that person off. And it could only been a half a minute longer. But we really do need to give the public the voice. That's the most important thing around here. You all want to hear the voice, don't you? So let's do it. Give them a little extra time. If we have a problem with it, where we have a lot of people speaking, then we can utilize that time situation. But not all the time. Please, give the people their voice. All of them.
Jackson Foot. I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on. Jackson Foot. Okay, that's the last one, Mayor.
All right. Anything further from council? We are adjourned.